Hello, all. Welcome you all back for yet another session on petroleum refining. So far, we have seen different aspects of petroleum refining, but today we are going to talk about the transportation of petroleum products as well as crude oil. In this episode, under transportation of petroleum products, we are going to cover about the different modes of transportation, namely marine tankers, pipelines, road and railway tankers. So, as I said, there are three major categories of transportation. The first and foremost is the marine tankers and barges, or the transportation on waterways. The second one is the pipeline system, where most of the products are being transported across the countries. Then, road and railway tankers. The marine tankers are primarily meant for transporting crude oil, that is the raw material for the petroleum industry, as well LNG, another raw material for the petroleum petrochemical industry, then for product carrier. The crude oil tankers come in varied sizes. So based on their sizes, they are categorized into Suezmax, VLCC, ULCC. Suezmax is a type of tanker which has got a capacity of 120,000 to 200,000 DWT. VLCC stands for Very Large Crude Carrier. The capacity of VLCC tankers are 200,000 to 319,000 DWT. Then ULCC, Ultra Large Crude Carrier. The capacity of ULCC tankers are beyond 320,000 DWT. Now you all may be wondering, what is this unit DWT stand for? DWT stand for dead weight tonnage. It is nothing but a measure of how much weight a ship can carry. It is the sum of the weights of the cargo, fuel, fresh water, ballast water, provisions, passenger and crew. Depending on the DWT, the naming conventions vary for crude oil tankers. Then there are LNG tankers which are totally different in construction and a lot of safety aspects are there. So though a lot of potential safety hazards are there, so far the industry has taken care that the incidents related to LNG tanks are minimal. So that is how sophisticated instrumentation and safety alert systems are there in LNG tankers. Now let's try to understand some more terminologies related to the marine transportation of the crude oil system. So jetty is a structure in the port that projects from land out into the water. It may also refer more specifically to a walkway accessing the center of an enclosed water body. So primarily it is a strip of land which is close to the port. So this is where the oil tankers will come and be berthed. Let's try to understand more about how this unloading or loading of crude oil in port is taking place. On the top of this slide, you are able to see a diagram where the crude oil tanker is unloading the crude oil parcel to a refinery. So primarily the crude oil tanker carries large amounts of crude oil from a long destination, comes to the port of the refinery, and as soon as the ship is arriving to the destination, so then it will be brought into the jetty. With the help of a pilot, it will be brought to the jetty, and in the jetty this will be anchored, and the ship has got massive pumps to unload the crude oil, and there will be pipelines connecting the port and the refinery, and there will be a flexible hose connecting the tanker and the pipelines. Once this hose is connected, then the receiving side, when the refinery is giving all the clearance to receive the crude oil, the pumping will be started. So this activity may take several hours. So depending on the size of the parcel of the crude oil that has been carried by the crude oil tanker. The crude oil would be received in the crude oil tanks in the refinery, and one by one each tank would be filled in. After the proper settling time, if at all, if any water that has been carried over along with the crude oil, that will be settled in the tanks in the refinery tank form. And then finally, the measurements would be taken with the help of a dip tape. So, with the help of a dip tape, the operator or the surveyor will come to know how much oil has been received, how much water has been received, and finally, the net oil received will be calculated. Normally, while gauging the tank, a sample will also be taken so that the density of the crude oil parcel will be measured in the laboratory. With the help of the dip tape, we know the level of oil received, and since we know the dimensions of the tank, and with the help of the chart, we'll come to know what is the quantum of oil received in terms of volume. When the density data is available from the laboratory, then we'll also be able to calculate what is the mass that has been received by the refinery. Because most of these calculations or payments are with respect to the mass of the crude oil that has been received. And as we all know, the refinery is processing the crude oil to produce different kind of petroleum products, starting from naphtha, diesel, kerosene, jet fuel, lubricants, asphalt, fuel oil, etc. But most of the time, the products will also be exported from the same port. So again, the process will be more or less similar, but this time a different kind of pipeline will be used. There will be dedicated pipelines for middle distillates and light distillates, and the pumps would be located in the refinery. And again, when the product tankers are connected with the hose, then the product would be pumped out from the refinery to the port. And again, these products will be taken to different destinations and where they will be consumed. Then now we are also talking about another term called single point mooring or single buoy mooring, SPM or SBM. Depending on the depth of the jetty in the port, certain tanks would be allowed inside the jetty. But if it is beyond the capacity of the jetty, then huge tankers cannot be brought into the jetty. So, in order to solve such problem, we have something known as single point mooring. A single point mooring or single buoy mooring is a loading buoy anchored offshore. That is, it is not on the land, it is on water. That serves as a mooring point and interconnects for tankers loading or offloading gas or liquid products. So, this will be an intermediate facility using which the oil will be either loaded or unloaded from the refinery to the tanker or from the tanker to the refinery. They are capable of handling any tonnage ship, even very large crude carriers where no alternative facility is available. So, here in this case, this ultra large crude carrier or very large crude carrier need not have to come to the jetty. They will be anchored in mid sea and close to the SPM or the single point mooring, and the tanker will be connected to the SPM with the help of a flexible hose, and the SPM is already connected to the land side. So once the clearance is given, the oil is pumped out irrespective of the capacity of the tanker. So this SPM is an intermediate facility to handle such kind of loading or unloading of petroleum products, and there is no limitation on your jetty size. So now when we try to understand more about the marine transfer, an important concept we need to remember that is known as demurrage. Demurrage refers to the period when the charterer remained in possession of the vessel after the period normally allowed to load or unload cargoes. So in simple terms, so the demurrage is nothing but the penalty paid by the chartering company, that is the refining company, for any delay from their side to the shipping company. Because the shipping companies will be paying huge money to the port authorities. So, in order to avoid that, the refinery is supposed to receive the crude oil as soon as the clearance is given. So, if there is a delay from the refinery side, they are supposed to pay a penalty to the shipping company, which is known as a demurrage. By extension, demurrage refers to the charges that the charterer pays to the ship owner for its delayed operation of loading or unloading. So, normally this money will be huge in nature and any refining company would like to avoid. Due to several factors, the refining companies pay a huge sum as demurrage to the shipping companies in the long run. So, if the reasons are identified, then the demurrage charges can be minimized. Now we move on to the second popular mode of transportation. The second popular mode of transportation is through pipeline, and these pipelines are broadly categorized into land-based pipeline and subsea pipelines. So, as the name obviously says what it means, land-based pipelines are laid on a land surface and they are visible in nature. While the subsea pipelines, so they are laid 100 meters or 150 meters below the sea. It may not be visible, but one has to be cognizant of the presence of such pipelines. Then there are certain pipelines which are very long in nature. That means they carry the products or crude oil from one state to another state or one country to the other country. These pipelines are known as cross country pipelines, and the seamless operation is vital for the operation of all the units. So now this picture gives a clear map of the natural gas pipeline network in India. So you will be able to see how the pipelines are crisscross going across the country, and you will be able to see the different kind of network within the network, right? So this is primarily owned by the Gas Authority India Limited, so which is having a major presence in the natural gas domain. Yet another term that is frequently used in the pipeline industry is right of way or ROW. A pipeline right of way is a strip of land over and around natural gas pipeline where some of the property owners legal rights have been granted to a pipeline operator. These easements can be both permanent and temporary, with the temporary easement granting the pipeline company additional space for construction. Normally, as I said earlier in the previous modules, the oil and gas industry is prone for a lot of safety incidents because whether it is upstream, midstream, or downstream, flammable material, hydrocarbons, whether it is a gas or liquid hydrocarbon, all of them are flammable in nature. Under certain conditions, they are also explosive in nature, and they can also cause potential health hazard and environmental hazard. If you see the upstream industry, the activities are happening in a secluded place, which is slightly away from the civic locality. Similarly, the refinery is also far off from the civic locality and it has got all the barricades. But whereas the pipeline, whether it is a product pipeline or crude oil pipeline, they pass through the civic community, so either subsurface or above surface, they pass through the civic community. So, if at all any mishap happens, it is going to create a lot of HSE impacts, health, safety, and environmental impacts. And that is why when we talk about pipelines, we need to be aware of the risks associated with the pipeline operations. What are all the different kind of pipeline risks are there? One is internal corrosion and hydrogen induced cracking. Then internal erosion due to the high velocity of the pumping of the products. External corrosion and bicarbonate stress corrosion cracking. Mechanical impacts, external interference, fatigue, hydrodynamic forces, geotechnical forces, growth of material defects, over pressurization, thermal expansion forces. Due to all the above factors, a pipeline can give way and the material inside the pipeline can come out either with the pressure or it can leak out, and it may create a potential fire hazard or safety hazard. So that is why the pipeline integrity is an vital aspect in the industry. If we talk about corrosion, the corrosion is broadly divided into external corrosion and internal corrosion. External corrosion happens on the outer surface of the pipeline, whereas the internal corrosion happens inside the pipeline. External corrosion is due to the external environment of the pipeline, that is either due to soil, the nature of soil, or moisture presence in the soil, etc. It is generally caused by an electrochemical process. It is formed due to the formation of anodic and cathodic sites on the body of the pipeline. Anodic and cathodic sites form due to many reasons. They are impurities or inclusions in the metal, local stresses, grain size or composition differences, discontinuities on the surface, difference in local environments like temperature, oxygen, salt concentration, etc. So once such anodic and cathodic sites are formed, and there will be severe external corrosion. Internal corrosion inside the pipeline is primarily due to the chemical reaction of the metal with the corrosive components of the gas like carbon dioxide or hydrogen sulfide. It is prevented by ensuring that there is no condensate of moisture in the pipeline. If the product has got the presence of moisture, then internal corrosion will be further intensified. Both carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide become corrosive when water in the liquid form is present. So, how to avoid the pipeline corrosion, or how to avoid, take care of the pipelines, especially when these pipelines are buried? One of the popular techniques is by way of cathodic protection of the pipelines. Cathodic protection is a procedure by which an underground metallic pipe is protected against corrosion. A direct current is impressed onto the pipeline by means of either a sacrificial anode or a rectifier. Now the corrosion will be reduced where sufficient current flows onto the pipe. The pipeline coating is provided primarily to take care of the external corrosion. So what are all the different kind of coatings that can be used? Hot applied asphalt or coal tar enamels, then polyethylene coating, fusion bonded epoxy coating, so which is known as FBE coating, plastic tape wrapping, then asphalt mastic coating, cold applied epoxy coal tar coating. Depending on the situation, any one of these coating will be chosen and then applied. When we talk about cross-country pipelines, these pipelines will pass through several states and countries. Generally, for short distance, the companies can employ pipeline inspectors who will be able to inspect the pipelines by walking along with the pipelines. But when we talk about long pipelines like cross-country pipeline, it may be very difficult to do using manual procedure. That is where today technology is playing a huge role. There are many ways to monitor and protect pipelines. Some of them are using aircrafts, land vehicles, or foot patrol. Using high resolution satellite imagery, adding traffic barriers to the above ground equipment near roadways. Then increase ground surveillance of line in a densely populated areas. So by employing different tactics, we are able to monitor and protect pipelines. When we talk about the pipeline industry, we should also be familiar with the term called pegging. So generally, over a period of time, that is considerable usage of pipeline, sediments will be formed because crude oil may have lot of sludges, and these sludges will get deposited, and it may affect the ease of flow over a period of time. So this is where the pigging is a concept where you try to clean the pipeline by the use of pigs. Long distance pipelines need cleaning and monitoring from time to time, which is done by pigging. Pig is primarily a cylindrical or a spherical shaped object made of metal or plastic, or with or without brushes at the edges, and having a diameter closer to the pipe diameter. So, primarily for simplicity, we can consider it as a spherical ball. So, this spherical ball, when it is put inside the pipeline, it will travel along with the product or the crude oil, and in that process, it is going to clear all the sludges that are deposited inside the pipeline wall. The purpose of pigging are multifold: to clean or remove debris, for pre-inspection and certification of newly built pipeline, to maintain efficiency and ensure continuous operation by removing pipeline deposits, to monitor corrosion and the damage on the internal surface of the pipeline. Today, now we are talking about a concept known as intelligent pigging. Taking cue from the ordinary pigging, now the industry has come out with something known as intelligent pigging or smart pigging. Intelligent pigs have electronic devices that scan and monitor pipeline inner surface and thickness and record the data. So, in the slide, you will be able to see the complete assembly of an intelligent pig or a smart pig. So, this assembly has got a recording unit, it has got a battery, and it has also got a way to propagate the magnetic waves. So, when it is traveling along the pipeline, it is going to continuously emit the rays. When it is reflected back, based on the timeline, the data is captured. And at the end of the journey of the smart pig, that will be taken at the end of the pipeline, and then from the smart pigging assembly, the data will be downloaded to a hard disk. The data will be huge and it will be terabytes of data. And these data will be taken to the pipeline inspection center, where the specialist, the pipeline inspectors, they go through the images, and then they give their interpretation. And based on their recommendations, the pipelines either some portions are modified or repaired and then reused. So, like how a refinery is controlled from a control room, pipeline network are also controlled by a control room. So, generally, SCADA systems are used in the pipeline control room. The pipeline systems are provided with sophisticated instruments and control system and monitored by a SCADA system, which is monitored by the control room operator in the pipeline control room. So, here the instruments could be either flow meters or temperature indicators or the delta pressure across a wall or a pipe fitting. So, by monitoring all the instrumentation reading, so it will be easy to figure out whether some leak is happening in pipeline network or not. Some of the advantages of a SCADA system are pipeline efficiency improvement by monitoring and the movement of the pigs, and the pipeline integrity monitoring and leak detection, gas quality monitoring, early warning of adverse operating conditions. So, in a SCADA system, so if appropriate instrumentation are provided in the field, then you can collect as much data as possible, and from that data, meaningful insights can be drawn. And many a times, when a leak is happening in an unknown territory where there is no man movement is there, then you need to have sophisticated instruments to identify at what location this leak is happening. Today, not only the electronic instruments, also the digital technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning, they are going to play a huge role in identifying the leaks in a pipeline network. Apart from companies like Gas Authority India Limited, which has got the huge possession of natural gas pipelines, the refining and marketing companies like Indian Oil Corporation, Hindustan Petroleum Corporation, BPCL, they have huge product network. So now let's see what are all the popular crude oil pipelines owned by Indian Oil Corporation. So some of the popular crude oil pipelines are Salaya Mathura pipeline, in short known as SMPL. Then there is a pipeline network connecting Paradeep Refinery, Haldia, Baruni, then Mundra and Panipat pipeline. So these are some of the popular pipelines which is helping the industry by having one common pipeline that can be connected to multiple locations, and then the crude oil unloading can be done in an efficient manner. If we talk about petroleum product pipelines, there are huge number of pipelines across the country. Some of the popular are listed here. For example, Mathura Delhi pipeline, then Panipat Ambala Jalandhar, Koyali, and Chennai Tiruchi Madurai products pipeline, Chennai ATF pipeline. So ATF pipeline is a dedicated pipeline meant for transporting aviation turbine fuel. So it cannot be used for any other purpose. So that way the product purity will be maintained. The list is long. So like this, the other companies like BPCL, HPCL, they also have their own dedicated product pipelines. Then we have gas pipelines. Gas pipelines of Indian Oil Corporation include Dadri Panipat LNG spur pipeline. Then on the southern India, Ennore, Tiruvallur, Bangalore, Puducherry, Nagapattinam, Madurai, Tuticorin LNG pipeline. So this way, different facilities are interconnected, and that way the operation becomes simple. Now we move on to the third most important mode of transportation of the petroleum products. The petroleum products are either moved through road tankers or railway tankers. So even a person who has not visited a refinery, probably most of us would have seen a road tanker or a railway tanker, because that is part and parcel of our daily life. So whether we use a road tanker or a rail tanker, there are different ways of loading it. There are certain tankers where the loading is happening from the top, which is known as top loading, and there are tankers where the product is loaded from the bottom. They are known as bottom loading. So depending on the requirements, these kind of facilities will be designed. In today's episode, we try to talk about the transportation of crude oil and petroleum products using multiple modes of transport. The popular modes of transportation are marine tankers, primarily meant for the crude oil. So they are known as crude carrier, or very large crude carrier, or ultra large crude carrier. Then pipelines play a very, very vital role in transporting, and they are the most economic way of transporting either crude oil or products. Then road and railway tankers. So apart from road and railway tankers, there are some special products which are again transported through road, but not with the conventional road tanker. For example, the LPG cylinders. The LPG cylinders are transported to the end customer again through road transport system. So we'll catch up with another episode in the next session. Thank you so much.